Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second webinar, Organizing Your Disorganization, presented by Mark Czar from Common Sense Development and myself, Letitia War, Assistant from Artistic Communications. How are you doing today, Mark?
Oh, I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing good, thanks. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started?
All right. Working on it. Okay, here we go.
Technical difficulties. So today's webinar, we're going to be discussing organizing, whether it's your business or your organization. What we've noticed lately is if there's not a good sense of organization within the group, whether it's tools that you're using or the people, it really can cause for frustrating situations as well as a negative atmosphere. So today's goal is to hopefully help you touch base in certain areas that you may have forgotten or hopefully introduce you to, as well as remind you and show you of tools that are available to you, some free, there are some upgrade fees, but that will really help you and your group keep each other on track. So as you can see here with our first slide, we're talking about committed people. That is one of the key areas with an organization, is that your people are committed. And there are going to be various levels of commitment given to people. So right up front, you want to ask them, how committed are they, or how much commitment can they give to your organization or the business? Key things you want to look for somebody who may not be committed or who may be losing their interest in being committed, is you want to take a look at their attendance, how often they'll show up for meetings or possibly helping out at events, where that leads into less participation. Maybe they're not being vocally active as when they had first started. Those are areas that you want to address with people and find out whether or not they want to continue to participate or continue to be in their, in the area that they're in, or whether maybe it's time to say goodbye. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, one of the things that I've found, and I've worked with a lot of different groups. I've worked with people that have volunteers, and I've worked with people that have, paid staff, and I've had my own paid staff. And one of the key things that kind of funnels through all of those different types of organizations is the idea of really making sure that people feel like they're on board and that they understand that their commitment to the organization, rather they're volunteering their time or they're getting a paycheck for their work, their commitment is really what's going to make or break the company or the organization. And I think that, as leaders and owners of these businesses and organizations, we have to remember that we have to set the bar that we want people to follow. And if we're not expecting people to be committed, then they might not even understand that that's a job description, if you will.
Exactly. No, that's you're hitting it right on the nail. I think one of the key things with anybody is, of course, communication, which will lead us into our next slide. Mark, if you could.
Sure.
So how you communicate and the ways you communicate really can make or break your relationship with people. There are various ways that we communicate now, whether it's via text instant messenger, Google+, Hangouts, Skype, if anybody even still does this, snail mail. But depending on the situation, it's going to determine in how you're going to communicate with people. So, of course, I'm going to talk about emailing first and foremost, because that's the normal, I guess, we would call it the normal way that everybody communicates nowadays. And with email, one of the things that I have learned is you want to make sure that your message is obviously clear, but that you're not keeping the subject going on for too long, and then you accidentally begin to incorporate maybe a second, perhaps even a fourth conversation within that same subject line. That can be dangerous for a number of different reasons. One, because information can be lost. The best example I can give you is that I'm on the board of directors for the Pix Theater, and one day the board president asked me about a membership list that she had emailed me, and I told her time and time again, you never emailed that to me. I was thinking maybe she thought she did because her and I do email a lot, and maybe she thought one of the emails she sent me included the list, but that it didn't. And so I had gone back home, searched my Gmail, and, you know, mind you, for myself, I do get about probably 100 emails a day, and my email list at that time was, or my, not my email list, but my email inbox probably had about 2,000 to 3,000 messages in it. So I had used my search to look for that specific email, and I did it maybe 3 to 4 times on different days, and not once did I ever find that email. And it wasn't until just recently, probably about a couple of weeks ago, where I was able to knock out my email account and get rid of a lot of the emails, that I finally found that email. And what had happened was that she had sent it as part of another email, and that is why I couldn't find it. And so one of the things you want to remember with email is to, one, if you have a new conversation you need to start, it's okay to send 3 different emails. You don't want to end up either losing information or miscommunicating. The other thing with emails, too, is that you want to make sure that it sounds clear and that it doesn't pose the possibility of making the reader upset, which can happen. Infamous key lock, or caps lock, excuse me, where we all know in chat world that means someone's angry. So we try not to use it when we're composing emails. But sometimes maybe when you're writing an email, to you it sounds normal, but to the other person, does it perhaps sound condescending? So you really want to make sure that when you're writing the email, it sounds friendly, or maybe don't write the email. Maybe it's something you need to talk to them in person just to ensure that there is no miscommunication between the two of you. How would something like this work in the business world, Mark?
Well, I think that's a really good rule to have. Always ask yourself before you send an email, is this got even the potential of sounding offensive, not even being offensive, because you're most likely not intending to be, but can it sound offensive? Is it slightly a touchy topic, perhaps? And if the answer is even a remotely yes, I really would encourage you to just pick up the phone. We like to use the email because it's quick and it saves us time, and we don't have to get our fingers dirty by dialing on the phone, but we can save a whole lot of relationships and a whole lot of hassle by just picking up that phone if there's even a instance. I know in my career I work with a lot of different franchises and franchisors, and one of my jobs has always been enforcement of franchisors' policies to the franchisees. And so there's oftentimes where I'm having to send out some emails reminding franchisees about how to follow proper procedures and making sure that they're staying current with all of their invoices and all of their staff training programs and what have you. And you get in a hurry, you send out a quick email, and you didn't really mean any offense. It was a friendly reminder, but because it was a touchy subject, people are now offended, and it could have all been avoided by a quick phone call. And so,
exactly.
I would say use email as a tool. Don't use it as the only mode of communication. Phone is still one of the best, in my opinion.
Yep, exactly. So, we've talked about communication and how important it is and how we need to make sure that we're using that effectively and efficiently. But besides communication, how are we keeping everybody on track? And that's what we're going to talk about next is, what is in your organizational toolkit? What sort of tricks or tips or tools do you use to keep not only yourself organized, but the people around you organized as well? And one of the things I use is my Google Drive. And I can't tell you how many times somebody has asked me for something, and we email, 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 and I don't want to download everything to my laptop. It's a pain in the butt, and then it eats up my memory. But thankfully, with tools like Google Drive or Dropbox, we're able to share that information and not have it eat up our hard drive. And whoever needs that information can access it at any time. So then I don't have to be burdened by taking the time to look for a document or an Excel sheet or a photo that I've already emailed to somebody, probably 4 times, but because they're not organized, they're bothering me, and it is a bother, and having me use up my time to look for that information again.
Right, and I was going to say, just in case, some people might not be aware, Google Drive and Dropbox are really document sharing tools online where you can store and share documents right online without ever having to, like you said, download them on your hard drive or remember to carry them around on a jump drive. You can just put them right on one of these tools and have access to them anywhere and easily share them with people, have people share them with you. The other cool thing, especially with things like Google Drive, is where if you're working on a group project, for example, everybody that has access to that document on Google Drive can go in and make changes, and everybody else can see the changes instantly. And so it's a really cool program.
Now, the only downside to the Google Drive, I must tell you, is that you do need to sign up for a Gmail account in order to be able to access those documents. I had recently a member of our board ask me for a volunteer list that I had actually uploaded to Google Drive weeks ago, and I wasn't aware that you needed to have a Gmail account in order to access this, so I ended up having to just normally email it to her so she would have it. The unfortunate thing, though, is that she will not receive the updated version, because the nice thing is I could go into my Google Drive and update the document, and then it'll be updated for everybody. Unfortunately for her, because she doesn't have access to it for not having a Gmail account, I'm going to have to probably consistently email her a copy as well so she has one for her records. So you want to make sure that when you're utilizing tools like this, that it's going to work for everybody. If somebody maybe isn't a Google fan, maybe they don't feel comfortable using Google, then Dropbox would be a really good alternative.
Absolutely. Google Drive is free. Dropbox has a free version that works for most cases, and then if you need a lot more online memory, you can buy a paid membership. Both of those are great. And one thing I would say really for people that are concerned about Google is you got to fall in love with it. It's the wave of the future. One of the things as a business owner you got to realize is that time equals money. And for me, Google has saved me a lot of time. And I was a big advocate against Google for a long time, not because I didn't like them, but I was just really content with using Microsoft Outlook and some of those other email programs. But what I found was I was spending more time having to update contacts consistently between my different computers and my phone, and if you have a calendar date, you got to set it in 3 or 4 different places with all of your different tools. And Google is a great way to save time because it just integrates all of that for you, extremely simple. But this really isn't a Google plug. This is about trying to find the tools that can make your life easier, but part of that is kind of stepping outside of your comfort zone is the real point there. And you got to play around with some of these different tools and figure out which one you like, but just keep in mind, at the beginning it's going to be new, it's going to be a little scary and different, but in the long run, to be able to set up processes that save you time, well, as a business, will actually end up making you more money.
Mm-hmm. A couple of the other tools that are really beneficial for project collaboration, one that I found was Concept Board, which was really neat because you can put really anything in this board and share it with groups, and everybody can modify it, make additions to it. And I mean, it's just a great way to throw a thought literally onto this virtual whiteboard and then have everybody put their own little thought bubbles around it and just kind of expand the ideas. SpringPad has something similar to it. With SpringPad, you have to have existing content in what they call a notebook, for example. The best idea I can give you is if maybe you're planning an event for your company or your organization, and maybe you want a theme. Let's just throw out masquerade. And so you would throw the masquerade photo up, and then you would continuously look for additional ideas and suggestions, and you could just on the board that SpringPad offers just kind of put everything together. It's not as, I want to say it's not as user-friendly as the concept board appears to be, because I've played with both. But SpringPad also allows you to share your notebooks. But I think for more active participation, concept board will probably be the way to go. Evernote is a good note-taking application. I used it when it first came out, but it didn't have a lot of what I needed, which is why I converted to SpringPad. But my understanding is that Evernote also offers the same board ability as well. Pocket would be a good tool to use if you have maybe articles or material that you want to share with your group. The nice thing is Pocket is like a bookmark, but not having to clog your already existing bookmarks list. It's something to where maybe if there's an article you want to share with the group, you can save it to your Pocket account and then share it later. But these are just some tools that I think would really help people to regroup and refocus and get back on track, and make sure that, especially with Concept Board and SpringPad, it allows you to see what work has been done and when, so you know that your team, your group, your people, that they're being proactive and working on what they need to work on as far as tasks and assignments go. Which leads us into our next slide, which should be talking about accountability, or effective leadership. The effective leader is really the one who is designed to keep the group together. They are going to play neutral. You know, they're not going to choose a side. Really in the leadership role, it's like I stated there, it's not about making friends. Yes, you may make some friends, but it's more about ensuring that your tasks are completed and that your goal is eventually met in the end. Some of the points that I made here with an effective leader is that your communication as a leader is vital. That means that what's coming out of your mouth 99% of the time is the final word. So you want to make sure as the leader you're getting all the information you can, you're getting both sides of the story, and you're ensuring that you're listening to everyone to make the correct decisions. Another thing with being a leader is that you must remember to delegate. Time and time again, there have been too many leaders that I have seen who have decided that their group isn't good enough to help them, and so they're going to do that task themselves. Then they become overwhelmed. Well, what eventually happens is they burn out, and they're not as effective as a leader because they're doing more complaining than they are delegating and being positive. You're basically a cheerleader when you're a leader. And if you find yourself complaining about your organization more than cheering it on, maybe it's time to take a step back and let somebody with fresh ideas come in and take over that leadership role. Maybe instead of letting go, maybe because that is difficult for some people, maybe that means it's time for them to take a leadership class. It doesn't mean that you're bad in your leadership position. It just means that maybe you need a refresher's course. I had to take a refresher's course in college for my son's math class. 5th grade math here, I should know this, but when you're looking at it, you're like, holy moly. And so I went ahead and took a remedial math course in college just to be able to help my son with his homework. It doesn't mean that I don't understand what's going on. It's things are different. Things change. And these leadership classes can really help you develop your skills and provide you some suggestions on how to handle your organization and your group a little bit better. Maybe because you're fading out, it's now starting to affect the group itself, which leads to number 4 is leading by example. You can't just be the leader who dictates orders and expects everybody else to do all the work. You have to also participate in whatever capacity you can. If you have somebody who says, okay, I have 10 events that we can attend where we're going to gain some exposure for our organization, well, between the board, that, or between your group, that needs to be distributed, and the president should go to, to a couple of them as well, or the leaders needs to go to a couple of them as well. So if you're not participating, then other people are going to look at you and wonder, well, if they're not doing their share of the work, why do I have to do that share of the work? So lead by a positive example, and it will trickle down to your group, and you will begin to see a nice achievement at the end. You'll achieve your goals, if not in a timely manner. Sometimes maybe you'll meet those goals earlier because people are so excited to be in this group that they want to help and do whatever they can. The more positive experience that you provide for people, it does show that you're going to get it back in return. Mark, how can people in business be a good effective leader?
Well, I think you really hit on a key aspect here with that top sentence. Leadership is not about making friends. One of my past experiences was in the restaurant industry, and I was tasked with traveling all over the country visiting corporate stores, and really as a district manager, my job was to manage a bunch of other leaders. And the effective leaders that I saw were the ones where you could walk into their store or their restaurant and the staff respected them and they understood that they were the boss and the final say, but yet they also understood that that manager was approachable and open to new ideas. On the flip side, most of the managers that I had to let go were ones who thought that their job was actually to be friends of their employees. And you walk in, and sure, everybody staff-wise are getting along really well, but at the sake of the customer experience, because the leader's not holding anybody accountable, and we're going to talk more about that here coming up. But if you're trying to just be everybody's friend, you're going to not be able to make the tough decisions. That doesn't mean you're unfriendly. That just means that you have to put your role above everybody else's feelings and do what is best for the company, not necessarily what's best for one person versus another person. That just causes disaster down the road.
You really do strike a good point with that statement, because in a business, depending on the kind of business that you're in, a lot of times you have to take a look at not who's like a VIP, but who are you going to be answering to? And again, a lot of times, depending on the type of business you have, it could be shareholders. So if that's the case, why are you going to try to keep people who aren't doing a very good job, or worry about making friends with everybody if you're not pleasing your shareholders? Because then your shareholders are going to look at you and say, you're not doing your job, you're out. So again, really, you want to be understanding. Nobody wants either a leader who's just not human. You have to be somewhat human, but you also have to remember, like you said, there's that line between being a friend and being a leader. And I think that's what's missing a lot nowadays, is that people don't know or don't remember to put that line up, where what business is business, but once you leave the office or once you leave the organization, then you're friends again. You have to really differentiate between the two. And the people who can do that, that's where you're going to see more of your success. There's an organization, a nonprofit that I was helping out. Didn't even really get a chance to really utilize my skills for them, but the unfortunate thing is this person, she was not an effective leader. And her communication skills needed some work. And it was very unfortunate because what their cause was pretty interesting. And what I saw was, even though she communicated, it was how she communicated that made people feel uncomfortable, to where when I would give her suggestions, it was more of a let's collaborate effort, but then she would bark it as an order to everybody and say, you need to do this. She said you need to do that, which, being on the receiving end, I've been on that, seeing those type of emails makes me feel like, well, this isn't a job. This is volunteering, so why are they expecting me to do this? Why are they expecting me to do that? When it should be more of how it should have been worded is, hey, we were talking and we thought, and let's get together. Or make it sound more as a group effort, because then you're including them. It doesn't make it sound like you're trying to single them out. So her as a leader, she really could have benefited from better communication, as well as, knowing how to make everyone feel as one and not individual.
Right. Very good point. Which I think really brings us to our next slide, where we do talk about accountability and how to form really this. I don't want to use the term groupthink, but for lack of a better word, you got to get everybody on the same page, and you got to get everybody realizing that you have to work together. And that means holding each other accountable. If one person's not pulling their weight, that affects everybody, and so that means other people have to step up and take responsibility. But I know that you've worked with a lot of organizations that have had some issues with accountability, and you've worked with some that have done this very well. So what have you learned here?
Well, from what I've seen, you're right. If the group has a positive atmosphere and are comprised of a lot of go-getters and motivated people, then the group succeeded. And if one person wasn't able to complete their portion, they weren't afraid to ask for help, or vice versa. The group wasn't afraid to ask them, hey, do you need help? That way, everybody was on track, everybody was getting the work done, and making sure that, like you said, there wasn't failure going on. On the other side, I've been with those groups where people hardly go to meetings, or I'm too busy to do this, I'm too busy to do that, and it seemed like the group could never get it together. And ultimately, one person who is supposed to do their job couldn't complete it because another person in the group wasn't finishing their part of that project. And, months later down the road, they're still working on the same project, which should have been completed, less than a month ago. And one thing I know a lot of people may want to ask themselves is, why should I feel like I need to help somebody with their accountability? Because accountability is responsibility. And all of us are responsible for whatever project, whatever task, whatever event, whatever business promotion is going on. And if you're working at a McDonald's and you're asked to wear buttons promoting whatever new sandwich is coming out that week, if you're not doing that, then you're not helping the business make sales, because the customer could come up, see your button, and then ask you about, oh, what is that new sandwich? They may buy that sandwich instead of the 69-cent cheeseburger they were going to buy earlier. Those are little tips and tricks that you have to remember about being accountable. So it would be my my accountability to remind my coworker, hey, you need to wear that button, just so we can help boost sales. The same thing with organizations. If I can't get my job done, I need to remind the person who's holding up their portion of the task or the job to get theirs done so I can complete mine, because then both of us look bad, and you don't want to look bad.
Right. One of the things that I do on top of small business consulting is I teach some college courses, and I've got a summer course going on right now with a big group project. So I split the class into about 5 or 6 teams, and then give everybody this semester-long project that they do. And normally it's a lot of fun for the students, but every now and again you run into a situation where one of the groups just isn't working out. Most of the members aren't wanting to participate, and so that leaves a lot of responsibility on the couple of team members that are willing to engage. And one of the cool things that I've seen this summer is actually that happened to this one student in particular whose whole team has pretty much checked out. And, you know, she was in a great spot where she could have made a whole lot of excuses, and to be honest, I probably would have felt for her and given her some leeway, but she didn't ask for any assistance or extra time. She held herself accountable and understood that ultimately the job had to be done, and so she did it herself. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that we've lost today is this ability to hold ourselves accountable. You know, we really know how to hold others accountable, and we like to kind of point the finger at other people. And there is, especially if you're a manager or a leader, you've got to be able to do that to people and point out their weaknesses and build up their strengths. But before you can do that, you have to be able to first hold yourself accountable and go, hey, ultimately, I'm the one responsible for this. I'm the manager. I'm the leader. If something goes wrong, it's on me, so I've got to, you know, do whatever it takes to get it done. And once we can learn, I think, as a whole, to hold ourselves accountable, and we're all doing that, it's going to make business, it's going to make our organizations flow a lot easier. But the other alternative is that we just make excuses for why things aren't getting done, and ultimately nothing will get done.
Exactly. I mean, you hit it on the nose. My husband had a similar situation. He wasn't the one who was in trouble or anything, but when he was taking one of his English classes, they had put the groups together to have them begin work immediately, and probably within 2-3 weeks, half of his group was gone. And I think it was just him and another guy. And so they weren't sure what was going on with their classmates, and so ultimately they ended up just doing their portions of their project, and towards the end they weren't held accountable for the other areas because the instructor, you know, as well didn't even know really what was going on with those students until almost close to the end of the semester. And ultimately, you know, my husband and his partner, they got their grades, which were passable grades, because they did hold up their part of the bargain to do the work that was required of them.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the last thing that we're going to touch on today is really the fact that you're only as good as your group. And it's extremely important that you take the time to know the strengths of the individuals within your groups, and you got to maximize those skills and those strengths. You can't put people where they're weak and expect them to excel. You've got to put them where they're strong and then hold them accountable to doing what they already know how to do best.
Exactly. I mean, just because somebody may have skills in, let's say, engineering, doesn't mean that they don't have great skills in, let's say, you know, note-taking. That's why I put the example that I did, that, you know, even if someone is a bookkeeper, maybe they've worked elsewhere where they had to hold down an administrative assistant position, so they have a pretty good knowledge of doing secretarial tasks. And so it would be a good idea to maybe assign them to take notes and create flow charts and things of that nature to help keep the group on task.
Absolutely, and really you can often tell by people's professions what kind of skills they're going to be good at. And this is really especially helpful if you are in some sort of a nonprofit organization or leading a volunteer force, because most likely people aren't going to have job descriptions that relate directly to what they do during the day. But like with your example here, the bookkeeper, you know, that tells me right off the bat that they're going to be very task-oriented. They're going to pay attention to details, and so absolutely putting them in as the administrator of your nonprofit, or the secretary, note taker, as you say, that's probably going to be a good fit for them. And so you got to sometimes think outside the box and not just put everybody where it makes the most sense, but really get to the core of what they're passionate about and what they're good at from a basic skill level standpoint.
Exactly. I mean, I can use myself as a good example. When I volunteer my time to help people out, I usually will go ahead and do it in the form of PR, only because I've already built those connections to help get them exposure. But there have been occasions where when I looked at the group, I thought, you know what, I could probably best benefit them by doing secretarial stuff because I am a really good note taker, very, I'd like to say pretty good detail-oriented, but very good with organization. And so anything in that aspect I can really help, somebody with. But again, just utilizing my skills where I saw that they would best benefit the group.
Sure, absolutely. Well, hey, I think this has been a great discussion, and I want to thank everybody for listening and just remind you that our next presentation is going to be July 17th, and we're going to be talking about how to improve your communication skills. And hey, also, make sure you get online to commonsensedevelopment.com or artisticcommunications.com and sign up for our free hour brainstorming session where both Letitia and I will sit down with you and talk about your business and give you some free advice on how to move forward. So, hey, we look forward to meeting you in person and also seeing you at our next webinar. Have a great day. Bye, guys.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye.